the masked lover. Let me come to you in clandestine disguise, like some Greek god did hide in clouds to gain some access to some nymph for the avoidance of unnecessary scandals, checking people's talk and prejudicial rumors, sanctifying life, consigning it to safety, to let no one in on it except the lover and his love. So will I drape myself in cloaked invisibility, to visit you in hours without witnesses, and get away with it, but leave you with a love contained, forever as a gift of unsurveyable longevity, and with a summary for life, enriching it forever, but for us alone, since no one else knows that we love each other. Let it be a secret for eternity, for our souls to mask them, and to make them recognizable more markedly, so that we always can continue our love in glorious independence of all things that do not matter, in true love such as mortality and incarnations, time and lifetimes, body's age and any circumstances, in glorious independence of all things that do not matter in true love, such as mortality and incarnations, time and lifetimes, body's age, and any circumstances. Orpheus went to his mother, the muse Calliope, complaining. Orpheus' complaint. Calliope, are you here, my son, complaining now again? Orpheus, but what else can I do, my mother, this world being as it is? Calliope, you must have patience with the mortals. Orpheus, it is not impatience that I suffer from. Your service, mother, is a tribulation, since I am alone in my outstanding musicality, and therefore mostly sing to deafness and to ignorance of what I sing. This dull mortality is killing me by their indifference, which refuses me all feedback and but answers me by shallowness, vulgarity, and unawareness of the worths of truth and beauty. As immortal in my talent, I was even not allowed a wife. They promised me her if I would perform and sing to all the dead ones, and I did so, but the dead kept her away from me nevertheless, and I was not allowed to even see her. Why then sing at all, if only for the dead, the deaf and ignorant, who cannot even keep their promises? Calliope, my son, life is unfair, I must admit, but you must have more patience and continue working. That is your responsibility to art, to beauty, and to truth, and all humanity. Orpheus, then let me die a martyr to the coarseness of the ignorant vulgarity of mankind for their deafness, to my worth and beauty as musician kills my music anyway. Calliope, my son, I'll see what I can do, but don't expect too much. Orpheus, I only want a settlement, because humanity has broken and refused me any kind of contract. Calliope, Orpheus, my dear, it grieves me so to see you suffer. Would you then insist on crucifixion just to have it done with? Orpheus, mother, mankind doesn't want me, and they never asked for me. What can I do then but submit a most resounding protest and efficient demonstration that will never be forgot in history, against the inhumanity, intolerance, and dullness of this mortal ignorance of man that forces me out of my job? Calliope, you are impatient. Orpheus, art and truth and beauty and the soul must breathe, or they will suffocate and stifle in impatience. Calliope, I have heard your prayer. Your complaint against the gods is hereby filed, but you must wait for their decision. Orpheus, for the gods to act, you have to wait forever. The heroine, she's married to an alcoholic, for whom she slaves and totally exhausts herself, blindly nourishing her love with endless love. As a drunkard he is professional, drinking much and all the time, with oceans in his eyes, was clever once and able as an artist, doing nothing, good no more, and being good for nothing. He is just a burden to her, when he's not a burden to society and everybody else. And when she is not present, he lies just with anyone and gladly. He's unpredictable, is able to attack a stranger any time, sees often 12 blue elephants behind him and dares never be alone. He has 4 children from as many broken marriages, while she has only 1 from but 1 broken marriage. When from time to time he gets too difficult, she takes some shots, sometimes a number of times a day. She simply cannot bear it anymore sometimes, and she is epileptic. But what a heroine for inspiration and divine endowment! She will never bust and never cease her splendid humours, only joy of life and warmest generosity she beams around, and in her daily suffering she is more beautiful than no one else. But it is a strained and straining beauty, a beauty of enforced and pounded hardness, of the tightened pain of inconceivable unyielding suffering, the spiting courage of a furious mother hard against all evil, a beauty rather masculine in screwed-up hardiness, a beauty which in its heroic stubbornness against all sense can only be as womanly as nothing else. Bitterness. They all say the same thing. No bitterness! It gives a bad taste wherever it shows up, destroys the poetry and kills the atmosphere, dispels the magic and interrupts the dreams, is alien to beauty and has no love in it, and yet we can't escape the truth. It's there stealthily lurking in the dark to wait for us, assaulting us in vicious ambush, to throw us in depression with all doors thrown open, to the cellars with the skeletons, and we just have to look through it, to name the skeletons and voice the accusations. And we can't just keep it to ourselves, but have to share it and give vent to anger, fury, grief, despair and pessimism until the fit is over and you can see sunshine beaming forth again that marks the positiveness in its proper light. And suddenly all bitterness has passed and is forgotten, like a parenthesis of no consequence, but still it's there, awaiting in the dark for opportunities that ever will recur, like darkness every night, with most unwelcome nightmares. Romantic love, a curious phenomenon with 1,000,000 definitions, and none of them correct. It's easier to say what's not romantic when it comes to love. For instance, sex is hardly a romantic point at all, while suicide always is when it connects to love. But most romantic of all love ingredients is the fundamental one, the simplest and the basic one, quite ordinary friendship that can be expanded and enlarged, constructed on forever and continuously built on and developed, spiting time and lifetimes and so on, a precious jewel to be shared and commonly enjoyed, a constantly enduring budding happiness, a spiritual glory and a lasting comfort, and, above all, faith, trustworthiness and freedom, ultimately ending up in what we all so desperately need and long for, which is definite true love that never ceases to be thoroughly romantic. The quarrelling dame, she quarrels like hellfire sparkling, wounding my soul with the sharpest of daggers galore, like the soldiers of Rome shot down poor Saint Sebastian with 41 arrows. She beats me with her entire being in smothering violence, destroying my spirit and knocking my head off, turning my eyes out so that I no longer can see her, benumbing my ears with her totally outstanding ire. There is hardly anything left of me as I retire, on staggering feet, not to see her again, but still unhurt I smile, for I know that she scolded me only for love. Some love declaration. I love you. What on earth does that mean? It means that you are my only love, that I can't love another, that you are the only one included in my love life, and that my life without you is no life. You are half my life, and this half is but half without it. So what can we do about it? That's the question. We just have to stand each other, live in the same world, and do the best of it. There's nothing else to do. At your spiritual service, your blindness is much more than ordinary eyesight, since by your clairvoyance you can see what others cannot see, and thus sees only what is best in man, since you bring forth his soul and sees it only, disregarding all the morbid outside shallowness stuck in the flesh and in the problems of futility that, fixed in egoism, is bent on vulgar opportunity, which you can't see, and thus fall prey to selfish folly of the coarse ambition of short-sightedness, while few like you mind only the importance of the soul, and sees it through in all its beauty of imperishableness, thus bringing forth the best part of your neighbour to some dangerous degree of spiritual hubris and intoxication, which they cannot handle, since they are not used to it, and need some discipline to learn how to control it, and thus they turn into your abusers of ingratitude. To our good fortune there are some exceptions, and I must regard it as my privilege in that capacity, as number one, to humbly serve you as a friend and colleague in whatever needs you ever might encounter. In whatever needs you ever might encounter. Entangled. Entangled in each other's hairs of spiritual richness and endowment, we are hooked and stuck together in the web of love and shamelessly enjoying it, while at the same time it gives me some conscience of the impropriety of living just for you, ignoring other duties and the problems of all mankind. We must compromise and split our love in different bodies, one attending outward obligations and the other constantly attending only you. Thus can I love humanity and life through you, and at the same time have you as my goal in my attention and my love of life and obligation to humanity, thus keeping our love humane in loving universally and never losing ourselves in false love webs of selfishness. On the death of Anna Politkovskaya, careful with that lethal weapon, you might kill somebody with it, and what's worse, make martyrs, that you afterwards will never more get rid of, since their testimony only will the more be sharpened, and kept furiously alive if they are killed for it. You clumsy hooligans that make a mess out of a decent work. A brilliant journalist, world famous for her courage and her boldness to report on all the murders and atrocities of our authorities, incriminating our whole government, and you deranged torpedoes just walk in and make a carnage out of a celebrity, respected and adored by all the world of conscience freedom fighters, and a lovely woman and a mother at that also, like the idiots you are, instead of simply forcing her abroad, no matter how, thus silencing and keeping her efficiently away, like the Chinese do with whoever dares to implicate the criminal authorities. What can we say? You made a mess of it. Now everyone call us accountable, and we cannot even defend it. All that I can say is, the less said, the better. Vladimir Putin. Another brave journalist, an investigating correspondent of the war scene in Iraq, she made sure to be friends with everyone, and most especially with the Iraqis and all common people, but was shocked to see how by the mere existence of the war all people became brutalized and alienated, and especially her friends, the common people, the Iraqis. And before the war was ended, she was kidnapped by Iraqis for no purpose, just because she happened to be foreign. After a few weeks, they realized they had no reason to keep her as hostage, so she was released and could return in safety to her friends. In safety? With her as a bodyguard was her best friend, and as they came back to the lines of the Americans, they opened fire on her without any warning. She was well protected by her friend the bodyguard, who shielded her with his own body, but was shot to death himself by the Americans, the leaders of this friendly war. The incident led to a crisis in her country's government, the Berlusconi government of Italy, who enthusiastically and uncritically had joined up with Bush. She just told the truth and risked her life for telling it, investigating what went really on behind the war scenes, and is clear about it. US loaded the Iraqi government of Saddam Hussein with mass destruction weapons for the use against Iran in that war 20 years ago. When Bush embarked on this war in Iraq some years ago, it was with the excuse that Saddam Hussein still had all those mass destruction weapons and was dangerous, which proved a fable since he did not have them anymore. So America gave fuel to that oven that got burning hot in Baghdad with Saddam Hussein, and then sat down on it, and that is why the US arse is burning in Iraq. Her name is Juliana Zgrena. She is still alive and continues risking her own life to build the bulwark of democracy by sticking to the truth and making it well heard and documented. Hold me responsible. Hold me accountable for all your inconveniences. I feel responsible since I invited you to this absurdly alien country. Make me guilty for all the inhuman controversies, insults, and humiliations that you suffered here for being only what you are, a free creative spirit with a right to be your own, and wise at that, and honestly constructive. It is no one's fault that people are here as they are, completely spoilt by a degenerating welfare system, turning people into zombies by the isolation brainwash system, which, alas, is common in industrialized, developed welfare states. In opposition to the backward cultural illiteracy here, we have to stand up on our own and just survive and make the best of it in these dark ages of exploding criminality, drugs abuse, and rape. Be not afraid, though, because I shall always stand you by, providing a protection shield against all bad vibrations and destructive influences, being totally immune myself. And we are safe as long as we keep at it, working hard creatively and actively, and stand up to the right of our artistic freedom as exceptions from the humdrum greyness of the common ignorance, refusing to get dull and brainwashed like the masses. And our freedom as creative minds is our mark of nobleness, of higher quality and status than possessions, property, or progeny of any kind, since we are children of eternity, The world is far too small for us. No ocean is enough for our need of space. We need all the ether of the universe just to dwell and breathe and move around with our minds as perfectly creative spirits, not accepting any limits. Reservations. True love is of course completely unreserved, or else it is not true and must raise doubts. However, burnt by lessons of experience, you must as a lover have misgivings and be more reluctant with the years to take the smallest risk, which makes you hesitant and undecisive when you fall in love one final time too much. But that might only be to love's advantage. Any love experience teaches you some good, and the more hard and painful your experiences have been, the more good lessons they have taught you, which can only be to your advantage. For the more experienced lovers are, the more their irresistibility increases, since they only love the more the harder they've been hit. This lesson tends to teach us that the more you hesitate, the more you doubt your love and have misgivings, the more true your love, and the more beautiful it will become. This lesson tends to teach us that the more you hesitate, the more you doubt your love and have misgivings, the more true your love and the more beautiful it will become. Ultimate love. There is no ultimacy in love, and that's what's ultimate in love. The ultimacies strived for and worked hard for. You can climb whatever mountain for it, but you'll never reach the top of that one, since that Venus mountain was created to remain forever the most sacred and unreachable of mountains, like the fabled Monte Verità with secret monasteries and sisterhoods, which you ultimately can get into any touch or understanding with by only dying for it. Better than to go on climbing, striving, working hard and longing for the ultimate evasive ultimacy that will go on attracting you and tempting you, provoking you and prompting you to any feat of heroism, impossibility and miracle, except to reach the ultimate fulfillment of that love of yours that once was given you for the ultimate challenge of your life. Still there on the hippie trail. 2 of them are dead, 1 murdered, the other was their only intellectual, with some serious interest in the classical. Paul is entertaining still and less pathetic than the Rolling Stones, who never knew their limits where to stop, with some romantic flair kept intact. They just kept on wasting everything on nothing, and especially on drugs. They all did that. Sid Vicious and the Sex Pistols, Brian Jones, the monster of vulgarity King Elvis Presley, while Cliff Richard and flamboyant Tommy Steele still have some style. While Cliff Richard and flamboyant Tommy Steele still have some style, but almost all the others wasted everything on going down the drain by drugs or alcoholism, like all jazz musicians. And the question is, as it was put by that old king of rakes, George Jung in prison, was it worth it? He felt it was almost worth it, although he lost everything. Even such endowed and ordered talents as the Beatles went on drugs as they earned millions every day. And Moody Blues were worshipping Tim Leary, dead of AIDS, the freaked-out drugs professor, who kept professing extreme liberalism until the end and never had regrets or ceased to keep it up. That totally absurd ecstatic exultation about living just for trips, as if life's meaning was complete detachment from it, any means allowed for any kind of drastical escape, as if hysteria was the truth and only happiness. That whole concept was fantastic and a kind of cult of pure phantasmagoria, and however mad that universal craze was, and how totally insane much of that music was, I can but quietly agree that all that waste and every single moment of it was completely worth it. In the sky, my love is freer than the blue sky and a darker menace than the midnight sky, but is as true as any sky that constantly remains up there and shows as much fidelity as any weather, changing constantly but being always there, to dream of and extol like any ideal ecstasy, to worship and remain in service of with gratitude forever, if it only would be possible. But you are always there, I know it, waiting for me, ready for me, with as much delight and charm as any love could ever dream of, and so shall I love you, as turbulently as the weather ever changes, but interminably with a cosmic passion, fit to fill the universe with more delightful sunshine than could ever be produced by any supernova banging off in indefatigably limitless expansion. But interminably with a cosmic passion, fit to fill the universe with more delightful sunshine than could ever be produced by any supernova banging off in indefatigably limitless expansion. Flare, how shall I relate to you, my love? We stand too close to be at odds, and have too much in common to have any reason for division, and we understand each other far too well for words to be of any service, needed or at all be necessary. We have everything, and yet we miss each other, since our souls are too united to allow our bodies to unite. Wherefore we have to keep some distance, not to risk our souls. And that's the secret of our love that is so envied, since it gives us so much more than just the joy of mortal love. That special character enhances and brings forth the beauty of our souls and underlines it in a spiritual development that has no limit, which is marked by others but not understood by them, which fills them with some envy which defies all definition. Let them be confounded by their lack of understanding. Deities should never mind the small talk of the mortals, and in our love our level stands above the mortal speculation, making us like gods in a special kind of love that stands forever beyond mortal recognition. The problem of the commonest love cliché. I love you, how can I make those words sound less banal? This common phrase worn out by everyone most every day, this formula turned shallow into water dried by verbal homeopathy, a boring repetition meaning nothing by too much protesting, overused especially by liars. But how can you else express it? That's the question, and the answer will be difficult. Perhaps the best way to express it is by not expressing it at all, but merely showing it by deeds, by poems, and by presents. For example, why the truest love expression is within yourself. You only know yourself, the real truth of your love. No one can feel your feelings and their worth and how they feel but you yourself. But probably the finest way to give them some expression as correct and true as possible is by creative art, especially by poetry, which was constructed just for subtleties. And if your loved one reads your poetry, accepts it as her own, and takes it to her heart, she will, if not at once, by time at least, and constantly more deeply understand it, especially since that's the kind of love that lasts. It cannot burn out and it cannot lie, but it is there and live forever. The forsaken lover's complaint. I searched for love, but all I found was loneliness. behind the masks and ruins of betrayed fidelity, in desperation trying to keep up a smiling face. I searched for virtue but found none that lasted, and no continuity in promises and vows and faiths. I searched for purity, but there was none that did not purposely seek out the dirt to wallow in it, as if purity was only meant to get debased. I searched for morals, but found only double standards, and where civil courage actually stood up, I found it crucified, or, if it managed to survive, neglected and avoided. I found no love that did not first think of its advantage, opportunist love that only calculated profits, and no love that was not narcissistic, thinking only of herself. I found in this world no ideals that were not crushed and smothered by reality, the world and power and the bulldozer establishment of ruthlessness and egoism. I found no spirit that did not strive ultimately for material benefits, and no religion that was basically not just camouflage for egoism, fanaticism, and power-greed ambition. And where was that goodwill that did not result in only tragedy and evil? Where was beauty that was not corrupted by the ugliness surrounding it and drowned by the environmental ruining of everything, pushed down the drain and trampled on, buried alive? Where is God, who they say is the only one? Where is God, who they say is the only one responsible for making all this universal mess and keeping it in order? To these problematic questions you will find one single answer only: in your solitude. The concert pianist. What care I about the audience and their tastes? The truth is only in the music, and my only job is to be faithful to it, honestly to make it right and render it some justice, and forget about the audience. They are only there to get the message, while I am the messenger who carries with me the divine and lasting message of a better world, of sanity that outlasts all the madness of the world. Compared with music, there is nothing but insanity in everything that is not music that sounds well. So listen carefully, hark well my message, for it is unique and it is difficult, demanding concentration and a total focus, for true music of pure harmony and melody is, in all its abstractness and aloofness from reality, no less than all the voice of God you'll ever hear. The divorcee. Shall I give you up then, since you show so little interest? I am tired of this constant hell of always looking after you, while you ignore me and just fool around, enjoy yourself and drown yourself in shallowness with younger men and lovers, risking clearly to get vulgarized like them in abysses of boring, cynical frivolity. Is that how love must always end? One doing anything just to escape the other's company, abandoning oneself to gaiety of nothingness, and ending up in vacuum on the other side with only bitter memories of foolhardy mistakes, and finding your most desolated loneliness in the mistaken lover and a marriage failure? Is my friend then to prove right in the most terrible, repellent possible reality, that there is no love but in self-love, which you fool yourself by calling your ideal? If that is true, then there is nothing in that truth, and no God in existence in such truth, no God in such a meaningless reality, and in this life no love at all. Then even death is better, and all suicides for love have never hesitated to prove such a bleak reality of no love possibility completely wrong as an absurd and total unacceptability. The crucial daily contact. Your love is all you need to have a full infinity of love and happiness, crammed into only one resplendent day, if only you can have a touch or glimpse of her. That day will then be saved and counted as successful and felicitous and unforgettable. But one day, just one single day without your love and without any contact with her, will inevitably bring disaster, ruin you, and throw you straight into the depths of hell, and that day will be lost forever. That's why you must keep up your love in daily contact with her, or you'll both be lost, you to your nightmares and she to her worse alternatives, and now will be the happier for that. There will be only turbulences, griefs and tears instead, when you could be so happy if you just maintain your love by keeping just in touch, reminding of each other, to keep up the paradise of your unequaled union, which the whole world is dependent on for your and all the universal harmony and happiness. Abandonment. The darkness of your soul is like a menace to our lives, and yet there is no evil in that darkness, only an entrapment in yourself that threatens you much more than anybody else. No wonder you are hopelessly nomadic, seeking constantly to get away from your shortcomings, limiting yourself by closing up your feelings, trying to escape from the dilemma of a personality that has too many anchors in the past to ever get across the sea. The more you try to get away, the more you will get wounded by your fetters. You just have to face the music, let the curtain up, forget about yourself. Deny yourself, allow yourself to get away from it, and finally allow yourself your feelings. Yes, get overwhelmed, cry out, you need it, it will do you good. And I will help you cry and share your tears and mix your feelings with my own. Thus shall we never leave each other, but together drown in blissful abysses of totally forgetting all about ourselves. Political detachment and disdain. Welcome, brave new world of cloning only and no love, you loveless phantom of aborted visions of unhuman lies, the twisted nightmares and sick morbid fantasies of Orwell, Huxley, Wells and other artificial futurists who all were wrong, since that acceleratingly deteriorating unhuman society is only an unnatural alternative to getting too deep into drinks and drugs, to unsound dreaming out of work in decadent intoxication. It's a lie that our language is impoverished, that we are all controlled by Rupert Murdoch and his media, since we humans never can be slaves without revolting. Any kind of tyranny and mad oppression, in whatever smart disguise, can only lead to triumphant rebellion with victorious overthrow. All materialistic thinking, programming and calculating are but lies that always are refuted by the unexpectedness of history. The whole world with its leaders, opportunists, populistic flirters, Pharisees and hypocrites are just a masquerade without a meaning, empty boasts of nothingness and cheapest nonsense, which attracts attention with the same efficiency, like anciently the Romans used to be efficient in producing on the vulgar masses by just ranting on the stage and making vulgar noises like of farting. The dream chase of love. My love is like a dream that never ends, that varies constantly in shifting hues and colours, always entertaining and dramatic, always shifting into unexpected turns and moods, as unpredictable as any weather, ever turbulent, irrevocably always coming up with new surprises, and as fascinating as the rainbow as it glows and shifts, complete after a rainstorm, always promising a never-ending future, full of new surprises, of just perfect wonderfulness without end. So therefore I refuse to wake up from that dream. I will cling to it and intently follow it, contributing most willingly to its expansion and development that keeps just filling not just my life, but all life around me with the luster of some splendor that just can't be left alone. So please continue, dream of love, to haunt me, never leave me, never let me down in peace and ease, but keep pursuing me, and I shall pursue you until the end of my unending loving days. Phantom love. The abstinence of you is totally unbearable, a torture worse than any possible hangover, a depression of Grand Canyon-esque dimensions, and a melancholy illness with no cure in sight, unless you suddenly would come and save me. It's worse than any epidemic, worse than AIDS, and all veneric possible diseases, worse than death, since one is forced to stay alive and without you. It's like being hamstrung in a hospitable bed, obliged to wear a straitjacket tied up tight, with no air left to breathe, and thirstier than any desert. It's like being thrown out into empty space, launched like a satellite to fall forever into constantly increasing darkness that will never spare you any nightmares. So, in short, my love, I cannot live without you. There is no life for me but a life with you, so I shall never leave you, but remain your constant guardian, as a crazy spirit hovering around you, to protect you with my loving madness against anything in life that is not love. Passionate poetry and poetical passion. That poetry is rather dull that only speaks of positive affection, love in the blues and fondling silliness, and goes from bad to worse in purple passages, since sex is never properly described in words. But when your love is set on trial and you have to face adversities, when Romeo and Juliet comes along in tragedy and blood and death becomes ingredients, then suddenly the inane love becomes an interesting affair. You need some drama to make love at all convincing, or you will get pettered out. So bring along the drama, the adversities, the jealousy, the raving passion. Raise the green-eyed monsters. Let them swarm up from Moriah and the dens of hell in overwhelming masses. Spice the passion with some sadomasochism. Start tying people to their bedposts. Bring along the chains and scourges. Bring the shameless nudity out in the open. Let the hairs loose in their maximum of length, and make some scenes with tears and outbursts, and the love will come alive in flashing fireworks and most explosive power. Screw it up with alcohol and drugs, make orgies out of parties, and let them derail, and you will have a passion that will set your poetry aflame and flying, taking off with jet acceleration, leaving ground forever. And you will be flying on the wings of love and never more be able to do anything without it. A dirge. She sings for love, but crying all the time. It is a sad song of deception and a growing disappointment, cheated of her life. Her melancholy is forever growing inwards, in a dreadful pain affecting heart and lungs, like in consumption. But her tears will ultimately release her, since that flow is purging not just her, but all that know her, since her empathy is so exceeding strong and deep, that anyone who can at all perceive it must be touched profoundly and not ever choose to fail her, although everybody does, since no one understands her grief, the constant flow of tears of blood, for nothing, seemingly, But with her cries all nature, half of all the forests of the world, now being gone, annihilated, burnt, cut down and ruined, while all wildlife is increasing in extinction, and the monster man keeps violating Mother Earth with no consideration, afterthought, or sense at all, while she's suffocated by his burning tyranny, transforming forests into cinders so that earth no more can breathe. And you are crying out your tears of blood for all humanity. I cannot dry them up, but only add to them. Universal vanity. What's in a relationship when you remove all vanity? What is there left at heart? What's in the core? What is the center of all love? What do two people have in common that results in tenderness, affection, codependence, and so on? The problem is you never find the core. All you can do is to forget about all that which does not matter, age considerations, practical and trivial circumstances, all that is just in the way, for souls can always find each other and stick to each other without banal means, since their relationship is written in the stars, and a relationship is always timeless. Ask the spiritists who never lose their touch with loved ones long since passed away, who are as much alive today as 100 years ago. Your love is always and invariably a matter of eternity. Once it is there, it's there to stay, and go on living with you all your life and beyond. And the stars confirm it. It's all written in the universe that there is nothing vainer than at all to bother, since we all are part of the eternal, and the key and contact with it is our love. Some sweaty lines. Running out of inspiration turns you on in perspiration, and your stinking transpiration adds to all that constipation. The light of our love. I love you in the morning, where the birds do warbling sing your praise. I love you in the evening, when the sunset decks the world in rosy golden colours, just for you. I love you in the daytime, when the sun delights in you and tries to outshine you in all her glory, which she fails in. So she is happy to be glorious just for her delight in you. I love you in the night, when passion rules in glowing assiduity and hotness, like the stars can never be outshone. I love you every day, like every light in the whole universe can never be shut out or hindered in its splendor. I love you perpetually and with imperturbable continuity that rather than to tire seems to constantly increase. I love you evermore, there is no end to it. So let's just keep this marvelous eternity, enjoy it and maintain it, and just let it shine. Idealism and allegory. Idealism isn't wrong, it's just that it but keeps on flying beyond mortal wits and possibilities, and thus reality refuses to accept her. She's right, though, to just keep on flying, or else she would not be true to herself and to her idealism, and there would be no idealism. That's the risk of true idealism. It has to fly high in the air and never tire on her restless wings, or she will fall and die and perish and be there no more to be admired by the happy few who understand the frail, unique, imperishable nature of idealism. The confidential lover. How shall I express my love to you without it being insufficiently expressed and incorrectly? It is vital for its life and for it to at all be able to survive that it is right from the beginning and that it cannot go wrong. You are the only one I love, and that I do not wisely but too well. That is the whole truth of the matter. There is nothing else to add. You have my heart and are the only one to have it, and I must regret it only if it would become a burden to you. For I am prepared to bear the burden of my love alone if it would be unbearable to you, or for that matter, to anyone who could not bear it or who would not have me. There you are. My prayer is all yours and in your hands, to do with it as my most sacred offering whatever you would choose, to cherish it and use it, or to do without it. I have been refused before and, sorry to say, used to it, so I can take it as a man and will survive, no matter how my love might be received, misused, manhandled, or refused and trampled down by those who would not understand it. But I will continue loving anyway and be the constant lover ever, for I know my love is of such kind that it can never be a waste. The Quiet Reader. I read you well, and therefore I keep silent. Let my silence be the voice of my appreciation. When you are affected, you can't speak. So I am sorry if I cannot let you all know what I read and how I love it. I have never read a poem here at Poet Bay that I did not find lovable. You cannot waste your time here. On the contrary, you cannot use it better. In a few days I'll be gone for yet another journey, but I hope to stay in touch no less for that. If not with regular and ordinary diligence, at least sporadically, since I never can stop writing. That was all. I love you all and will continue reading you, although unnoticeably and invisibly to you, unless your sensitive poetical antennae will perceive how much I love you all. In the void. Without love, what can you do? Your life becomes a desert void of flowers. There is no water for your dryness. Common sense is worthless. Like all instruments and indispensable technique, you can just not do anything but languish in a boredom worse than any hell. So any love is better, and that means exactly any love. Let her misuse you and abuse you, use you for her calculation and own ends. Let her deceive you with just anyone, just leave it all to her, as long as you may keep her, as your love, for that is all you have, and there is no life and nothing to live for, but a vacuum worse than death without it. And that power thus supremely exercised is not by women or by any partners, but by that phenomenon called love alone. One of those sing-songs. I would love to sing a song for only you and me, to go a-singing all along, for lovely things to be. For all bad things must have an end. True love is all we have to spend. We have no other time, my friend, for any other end or trend. So sing along with us this song of true love that just can't go wrong, as long as we keep getting on to sing this unforgettable, amazing song. For all bad things must have an end. True love is all we have to spend. We have no other time, my friend, for any other end or trend. Some serious business. There was an old shithouse in Tangiers, public of course and used by everyone, so you could not enter because the whole house was full of shit. So you just had to shit outside, standing on the safe side of the threshold with your ass inside and fire. Children. We are children all that never can grow up, since even the most grown-up and most serious must remain and never can become more than a child, like even the most aged and whitish bearded patriarch, like every politician, bishop, bureaucrat, aristocrat and autocrat. Inside at heart you never are more than a child. All honours, medals, titles, merits and diplomas are just frippery and shallow masks, hypocrisy and fakes, since all of life is just a childish thing that constantly grows more so, the more you think that you grew up and mature, and the wiser you think you are getting, the more childish you become. And therefore the old man and the small child are strongest among humans, since they only dare be openly and credibly and naturally childish. Only they enjoy that privilege. Those so-called mature ones that acquired a position and responsibility, who are so stupid that they start to take life seriously, must never lose their face, that most ridiculous mask of maturity, since they imagine that they matter, which makes them so utterly ridiculous. No one, therefore, is more human, real, and natural than those who all their life through dare prove openly that they were never more than just small children. The winds of the unconscious. The melancholy landscape of our love is harrowed by unfriendly winds that blow the beauty of our dreams to tatters. But on the other hand, these hard and cruel winds, just by their hardness, blow our love across the world, like wind horses that never tire. That's our glory. We give never up, we never tire. We just keep loving through our work of beauty, to renew the world and cleanse it from its foulness, like the prophets of eternity that might be our unknown mission, subconsciously, but all the more importantly and powerfully. That's our only job, to keep the course of truth to our vocation, which is only to create through love a lasting world of beauty. One more comment on Joshua. See my earlier poem Compassion, Requiem for a Dead Lover, October 5th. The ghosts are always there, whether they dwell in limbo or are gone, for new adventures in samsara. And that's the miracle of spiritism. Although a loved one long ago has left and taken up a new life burden, it is possible to have subconscious contact with her soul. She will respond. Her depths of soul are always possible to stir and to recall to life with contacts of an earlier incarnation. This is difficult, absorbing and subduing stuff that never can be thoroughly investigated, only nosed on and discovered hopelessly to be an entrance to eternity that only leads to one more door that opens into other, deeper, more eternities. The inseparableness of dreams and reality. The highest possible of dreams is naturally just a dream of love, but could be nothing but a dream of you. So long now have I loved you, and yet you are so far away, unreachable and unattainable, not like a statue, but more like an angel, and yet are you closer to me every day. How is this paradox to be explained? It cannot be explained, but only understood. We know each other better than tough lifetime couples, and yet have not lived together for a moment. Flashlights have our golden moments been of rare togetherness, but flashlights are more blinding and efficient than unending days of boring greyness. In this lifetime we have flashed through many lifetimes, as if it was time to bring them all together in a single moment of explosive truth, to let love once for all and definitely triumph in a bliss of irreversible imperishableness. The passion of your hair, more brilliant and unfathomable in its richness than the shimmering profundity and lustre of the Milky Way. The lights and colours of your gorgeous hair is food enough for an eternity of sleepless nights. But is my passion worthy your divinity? Your passion speaks a language far more eloquent than any body language could express, and I must try to match it with a similar sincerity. But such ambition is impossible for mortal limitations. That's the problem of our passion. It is out of bounds, and therefore I am by respect reduced to silence. But rather call it awe, and let another sense take over, that extraordinary power of the other senses than the five, since that is what we need to understand and get to know our love. So let us dwell for all eternity in outer worlds than this so sorrowful, mundane and trivial one, with all its most pathetic bodily and sorry limitations, to stretch out with the ambition of our love for fruits of even stranger trees than the forbidden ones of knowledge and of right and wrong, to celebrate together that intimacy with stranger secrets of eternity and life and death than ever could be properly expressed by human passion. Into the bottom of despair, when the storm gathers and things get rough, and darkness besieges you, strangling your life, surrounding you with constant terror of outrageousness, and turning all your daylight into night, driving you hard into cornered defeat, losing everything hopelessly, even your way. You have nothing left and no salvation to turn to. But even when all beyond all hope is lost, there remains in the darkness of hopelessness someone to love who will think of you kindly. And that knowledge is all you need to survive almost anything, even the horrors of terror. And never there was such a total despair and complete utter darkness that love did not always shine through it, dispensing of all that was just in the way. The talisman. We have a secret pact that no one can begrudge us, since no one knows about it, or could even understand it, since it is within ourselves, the secret understanding of a higher sense of wisdom in a total alien language of pure feeling, sensitivity and touch that make us far more vulnerable than most people, who would judge our extra sensitivity a nervous problem of a schizoid kind, while it in fact is like a talisman, more costly than all riches of the earth, and as a love affair and language much profounder and much higher than all commonplace communication, and we share it with some dead ones who are still alive beyond the grave, and much more so than all those normal people who would never understand an extrasensory perception of a language of pure feeling that belonged to more romantic times of depth and pathos and compassion than has ever been in use again, since it was buried and forgotten with the tears of many tragic poets and composers. The dark sides of beauty. Many are distraught by that tremendous melancholy of those sentimental moods and melodies that fill the golden music of Chopin and makes it overwhelming, and he was a sick divinity indeed, just crying all his life for all his lost engagements, all the girls that wouldn't have him for his poverty, or for George Sand, who just maltreated him and made his illness worse by mental cruelty. But there is one more side to it, an even darker one, the passion and the storms, the raving fury of the world's political injustice, and that's where you have the universal illness. It was not Chopin's, but all the world's. His Polish motherland was cruelly occupied, suppressed, stamped down and ruined by the Russians, and for that Chopin's heart bled itself to death, not from relentless harm and righteous fury, but from bottomless compassion. What he did was to cry all his soul out, and to waste it in a pathos of wild, mad and bitter sorrow, with no ends, no cure, and nothing else for it but hopelessness, like in the case of any bolting horse that can't be stopped except by her own heartbreak. That's the darkness, the supremest terror, the compassion that can find no end, no bottom to its sorrow, and no choice but to continue crying out forever. True love undefined, even the heaviest planets of the highest density and solidity are just flying around. True love is never to let down and never put down. You just can't pinpoint it. It has its own laws, never to be violated, never to be understood, and least of all defined. You just obey them, follow them, and close your eyes to learn that you are blind, which is what you are, a child astray and drifting far away, in no man's land in darkness, flying just around, with nothing stable, nothing to depend upon, and nothing possible to cling to, except love itself, the perfectly supreme capriciousness that has to be obeyed or simply left alone, and then you are alone indeed. The love of paradoxes. While at the same time we are so much like each other, we are totally each other's contraries, unmatchable irrevocably with each other, while we cannot do without each other, you dependent on continuous company, me dreadfully dependent on the freedom of my solitude, while also you need, most of all, your space of freedom, and I wallow in that sadomasochistic social addiction, which just burns me out like you are burnt out by all that you loathe and cannot do without. It's one of those impossible equations. Love is never mathematical. You need your freedom and your loneliness and company, and I need solitude and freedom and addiction to all that which harms my work and limits my expansion. Are we both then self-destructive as creative artists? Yes, in some ways, since we need to be alone and free but are dependent on each other, and must do without each other totally except as friends, whose love is far too strong to be allowed except as spiritually roaring beyond all control. And that is never satisfactory, no matter how much we are soaring beyond space and time in madness of our sanity of love, which gives us nothing but a whole eternity of sleepless nights. Life's gift is only to be given, never to be taken. I am with you on the dark side of the moon, where no one sees your tears, but you shall never cry alone, not even in that total and eternal darkness, for I am the light that shines up even that most hopeless dark side of the moon. The cure is to let go, forget about yourself, and concentrate on anything that isn't you. It's your responsibility to life, to love all life, and not just be alive yourself. You are the fountain of your life that spreads your life to others and should not keep life just to yourself. Old people may be boring, but they know what life is all about, or else they would not still be living. They would not have lived so long if they were not familiar with the knowledge that your life was given you to give to others, not just to enjoy it for yourself. For there is no more certain misery, unhappiness, entrapment, and despair than to get stuck in bleak self-centeredness, a one way only down to hell, while life is only in embracing it with love and giving it away with constant care for others as long as you live. A greeting to Zoya for Diwali. Sorry I can't join you. We are stuck here in the darkness, the notorious depressivity of Scandinavia, where now begins the dreariest season of the year, around the Halloween, when most of the year's suicides occur, and many people die for nothing, maybe just from darkness and depression. In the darkest days we have but 7 hours daylight, and the rest is darkness at its densest, thickest, and most daunting. But in India the summer will continue still for yet another month, and I will join you there as prices fall after Diwali, to enjoy the freshness and the joys of India in the fall, when people there are at their very nicest, and the harassment of tourists vanish with the dollar tourists, while the pilgrims and the lovers faithfully remain who know and love their India. I can't promise to find you in Aligarh, but at least I will give you some greetings from my lovely mountains, Nanda Devi, Annapurna, and of course the loveliest in the world, the Kanchenjunga. Reduced to silence. When reduced to silence, love still goes on more glowingly and intensively than if it was outspoken, for silent love keeps quiet only to control its fervour, utter honesty and overwhelming truth, sincerity and depth of feeling, to maintain itself and save it for eternity, to keep it burning, always with the fullest flame, but the more faithfully in secret. Terms of trial. My concern for you in your melancholy is limitless, complete and hopeless in incurable despair and worry, like your own outcrying anguish. But what can we do about it? This benighted situation is not of our making. We are innocent of alien mentalities, like suppressing ignorant and parasitic ones, and see no solutions else but to cut off the leeches, not have anything to do with sick mentalities, and just do our own job in peace and quiet, obstinately and in isolation if there is no other choice, although it is both hard and difficult to constantly ward off adversity and struggle against evil winds of no intentional but no less ruinous hostility, of pure indifference, ignorance, stupidity, and sloth. What can we do? I'm afraid our only choice is just to keep on working and keep smiling, doing something good out of a hopeless world, destroyed by spiritual corruption, poverty, and misery. From the depths of wilderness. When in the depth of our acquaintance I must question our validity and search a purpose with our flight together in the waste of space in perfect blindness, I find nothing to confirm and validate our union, only the right contrary, impossibilities and arguments against it, but that is the very challenge. We have entered far too deep into each other's souls to extricate ourselves from this immersion, and the fact that circumstances, all of them, cry loudly out against it, only makes the fusion more consolidated and increases the attraction of the challenge. So let's just go on in blindness anywhere and stick with cheeky obstinacy to each other, even clandestinely if it so must needs, since we have nowhere else to go. Preferences. People with a dark spot like alcoholism, addiction, sexual mistakes, and other kinky, weird anomalies are usually more human and more interesting than normal ones, of orderly perfection and impeccability, who more incline to ordinariness and being boring. Not that you must be extreme and utterly immoral, not to be a bore, but people who have tasted self-indulgence usually have much more interesting human knowledge and experience than all those who just are natural and normal. Give me, therefore, a fanatic or an alcoholic or an addict, and he will be better company than any stable person of position, who knows nothing about man, lives only for himself, and has no love but for his possessions and his self. Audible whisperings around the globe. All I miss is you, since you are all the world to me. What is the world to me with all its riches and careers and fortunes without you, since you alone give any meaning to it? Yes, I miss our midnight conversations and the outcries of our unions, but we shall join hands together once again and hug each other in embraces that will never cease to warm each other for the longest winters and to fill our memories with food for thought, enough for candid tenderness without an end to it. That's all I can devote myself to you in your absence, sentimental and pathetic weaknesses of sad nostalgia, and melancholy to make tigers cry for crocodiles. You are with me and I'm still with you, no matter how extreme the geographic difference is, which problem can't go any worse, which means things can go only better then. Let's hope so, for that is our only comfort. My home is love, and there is you. You are its only tenant. No one else was ever willing or invited. So, in brief, my home is you, and all my love is yours. There is no night with any darkness, since there is your light in it and in my life, which shines for you with only you for any splendor. Thus shall this be constantly repeated in my heart and soul and by reciters, as long as there is at all in this world any love to uphold love with, for the only sake of love, the only matter in existence worth existing for. Greetings from the Happy Valley, a greeting from the hippie heartland, with some legendary places like Manali and Malana, Manikaran and Almora, where the grass grows wild in any quality and even better quality the higher up you get, with permanent communities of hippies of all ages, none too old and none too young, all seemingly completely happy with a paradise of dreams, that is of daydreams, but of beauty also, since here people tend to be more beautiful the higher up they get. In Manikaran and Malana they can vanish into happiness, since there they have the drug of drugs, datura, which can place them out of time for 2 years or forever. It was old Timothy Leary who discovered how the cannabis grew wild around this area in any quality, which instigated the first hippie colonies to settle here, which since then constantly have multiplied the last years thoroughly with Israelis. There is nothing wrong with that sort of a carefree life. You do no harm to no one, while occasionally the police makes raids to Parvati, Malana and those places, to burn up the harvests of the villagers of cannabis, which ruins them and to no good for anyone. It is a kind of bum life, making you a chronicle outsider, but there is no harm in that as long as you just keep it for a spice. In fact, it has been proved that cannabis can cure a number of diseases that would be considered hopeless otherwise, amongst them chronic diseases and disorders, often undefinable mysterious ones that thus can be miraculously cured. But let not that spice take over the control of all the food that is your life, for then you waste it. It will then end up to nothing, while a spice should just augment the nourishment, not kill it. Jesus to Mary Magdalene, a speculation in how he might have been thinking. You are my closest friend, perhaps my only friend, and you are safe with that relationship, and there is nothing that can change it ever. Powerless is every slander. You have been enough subjected to that worst humility. A woman's reputation is her only asset and the only thing she has. You were bereft of it completely long before you met me, but instead, and listen carefully, you have acquired something much more to be envied. By your knowledge of so many men, you know them, you have all their souls in your possession. You know man like man can never know himself, and therefore I esteem you higher than the most respectable of women. Therefore you shall be forever under my protection and considered the most honoured among women, second only to my mother, who is just another fallen Mary like yourself. Remember, I am but a bastard out of wedlock, who has taken on myself this messianic mission only since I am the only person qualified to do it. So it is just my responsibility that I have to accept or fail humanity, which would be a much worse deception than to make a king out of this bastard. You are then the sister of my destiny, a bastard seeking comfort in a fallen woman of some prominent experience, and you must admit we match each other well. We do not even need the ceremonies and the superfluous complexities of sex to prove it. And in this my highest possible regard of you, two fallen women closest to my heart, I promise you, shall every woman of all ages be secured and blessed, worshipped and protected in my name. The harmony of our music. The sunshine of your smile is more than just enough to make my day, more full of glory and delight than any sponsor could, since your good fortune, harmony and happiness is all I care for. It means everything to me, and I can't bear to see your eyes besmirched with tears, your wrinkled front or any sorrow in your being. Light my life with your good company, light up the darkness of my soul with your good influence, light up my energy with the most fervent fire of our love, and light my fire with your trust and smiling friendship. And how can I else but love you, and keep loving you with ever more increasing depth of feeling? Keep me burning like I will keep loving you, and we shall never fail in keeping up the light and harmony we owe to our music. The Pledge. Today 6 months have passed since first you came into my home, and since I fell in love with you. I cannot hide it to myself, although I can control it, and my chief concern has ever been to not give you a burden or to hurt you in whatever way. I could do anything for you, and have so far been happy to at least do all my best to help you on your way and ease up any difficulties, which of course I gladly will continue to, and as I wrote you on your birthday, I will be to you whatever you would want of me to be, and never violate the limits of your pleasure. The eternal flow of life and love. The flow of life and love can never be arrested. No sloth of slow mentality, no ignorance or violence, no government oppression, conscious or unconscious, no bureaucracy or automatic tyranny, no systematic greed or hopeless petty thinking, no autocracy or any dreadfulness of politics, no nuclear scarecrow like some monster of dictatorship, like that Korean booby, and no terrorism, no human vanity and folly, no oppressive ideology of atheistic fundamentalism, like the Chinese imperial state of communism, forbidding all religions except atheism, and persecuting them with force. Not all the weapons in the world, including all the nuclear ones, can stop the naturalness in the flow of life and love, ubiquitously in the universe. Remember, there are just as many suns and stars around the universe as there collectively are grains of sand in every beach and desert all together in our world. Our sun is just a grain of sand out of this universe of sands, so life must be all round the universe if it is here, not frequently and everywhere, but sparsely. So our life and love are here to stay, and to go on continuously forever. Lovers in limbo. My love is all reserved for you, but in that reservation is included such a lot of others, like as if my love of you was something of the very motor that made possible my love for all that lot of others, friends, acquaintances, the family and relatives, and even strangers on my journeys. Such, in fact, have more often than not become my truest friends, nomadic wanderers, adventurers, and exiles, like so many fugitive Tibetans here in India, and escaped unsocial refugees from gross injustices in Europe and the Western world, from communism, from Thatcherism, from brutal Bushism and capitalism, and from themselves, the vainest and most desperate escape of all. But they have all somewhere some love that constantly keeps waiting for them. No matter how exiled they are, they always have a home at heart to someday hopefully return to. But the truer and profounder their love is, the more it hurts. and the more painful is the enterprise to take it up again. There are so many lovers suffering in limbo, and at present we are two among them. Through the valley of shadows. Suddenly you woke up in the valley of death's shadows, with no light for any guide and nothing for a comfort, only darkness perfectly impenetrable and opaque, like hell itself all of a sudden fallen down to earth. It's only to climb up again the long and dreadful way from bottom of despair, one slow step at a time, with arduous, tortuous labour, patiently and carefully, and never to lose hope and sight of the salvation. Just go on and carry on the unendurability, the burden of the suffering, and you shall be rewarded with the glory of survival and the miracle of life, to be able to start living once again with some acquired extra wisdom in addition of experience, and of have had the honour of the triumph of the victory and conquest over death, with the pure will and power of the soul and personality, the vicissitude of your integrity proved worthy to continue its existence on its own with confidence. Yet another description of love. The limitlessness of love is like continents worth charting, but so much more interesting to study and to learn from, since it moves ever variable and changeable like water, flowing constantly with ever-increasing energy, working wonders everywhere of ever-changing kind, constantly renewing itself like an ever-burning phoenix, constantly on flying wings and ever flying higher, towards finer purity and mind and soul, since true love never can be sullied, only constantly, miraculously multiplied. Picturesqueness in hippie classicism. My friend was like no other friend, the most outstandingly and typical of hippies. If he'll excuse me, but I simply can't resist describing him in something of his heyday, when in Varanasi a good friend of mine encountered him. I hadn't seen him for some years myself, but that encounter made such a profound impression on my friend that actually he wrote a book about it. John, forgive me if I give you now away, but you have changed your face so often, and you never have repeated any of your masks, so no one, I assure you, will from this description recognize you if he ever met you at some other time. His blonde hair reached his waists, he being Jewishly convinced that long hair, like the Sikhs maintain, ensured the strength both physically and of character. But add to this great silver earrings in both ears, the fancy dress of a most typical barefooted Hindu pilgrim, dressed in orange, beads and staff and beggar's bowl, and so on, teaching Westerners the ways of Varanasi by the Ganga and its holiness, and most intriguingly initiating them in other mysteries than they had ever heard of. This my friend, who went on boating in a full moon on the Ganga, with the burning candles on the river to enhance the effect of the moonlight, blending with some fleeting corpses, was a Russian from St. Petersburg, who there enjoyed the one trip of his life, transforming him into some Atlantide philanthropist, seduced by the profound and irresistible initiation which my friend produced, a magic more abstruse than Castañeda's. Where are you now, my friend, and in which shape will you be present when I see you next at full moon by the Kanchenjunga, in the fullest glory of the Himalayas? If I know it, I will not betray it, so that I once more can keep you for myself. The fleeting spirit. The fleeting spirit of our love is you and me and something else between that never can be specified nor gratified, but moves us on incessantly on cosmic winds, blown everywhere but to ourselves, since this untouchability is the right essence, unidentifiable of our love, more precious than we ever can imagine or get any relative idea of ourselves, since love belongs to us to merely escape us, leaving us enigmas only that cannot be solved, but something else between, a mutual understandability of things that no one else can get a distant hang of, miracles and powers unexplainable and constantly astounding us with new expressions and results. The fifth element, a lecture on the elements. The question is which element to choose, which one you best identify with, which is stronger or most likable. The first is earth, the solid matter, all that is concrete, which more often than not, however, is submerged and drowned by water. Water also quenches every fire. Fire, which devours all, is always powerless against it, except when it combines with air, which then can dry up any lake. Is air then the most powerful of elements, since nothing can subdue it, pin it down, or even see it? But there is in Buddhism a fifth element, denominated wood, which is organic. Of all organic forms, wood is the hardest and most enduring, which is why in Buddhism it has come to symbolize the essence of this fifth of elements, which is simply life. It is dependent on the other four. It has to breathe with air, it has to grow and live on earth, it can't do without water, and the fire is its energy. But basically, all four elements have together that one function only, to support the fifth and make it possible. The only really meaningful and interesting, important element, the toughest and most usable, long-living form of which is that most precious wood we all need knocking on at times. So let's just plant more trees, the most invaluable support of life, producing air that's oxygen, providing energy, enriching earth and binding the wild waters, and not take them down, for that would ruin everything on earth, to lose the fires and the waters, and impoverish the air. In short, a tree is of as much importance as the life of any man. Love portrait. How shall I define my love of you? It is not easy, since it has too many aspects. First of all, your beauty is not your first thing, and not what I love most in you, but what it is a mirror of, which is all that which is not seen, but the more strongly felt and recognized as something much more precious than your beauty. Let's go deeper into this, because here is the clue. The outward mirrors of your soul are so remarkable, reflecting depths and faculties that multiply your character into a maze of wonders and enigmas, but at the same time of wisdom and reliability, a singular trustworthiness and wonderful profundity and rare presentiment and foresight of, I would not hesitate to say, prophetic character. While at the same time you are honest like a child, your soul is bare and visible to all the world, which makes it quite inevitable that the whole world can but love you. Darjeeling. Silver beams illuminate the landscape and increase with constancy around the hills until they blind you into rapturous exhilaration for the mountain far above all others, so serenely highlighted in heavenly and perfect majesty by the enchanting morning glory rising from the sun. And in its shadow, this small village, like a child born from this paradise of beauty, living almost only from the beauteous charm of Kanchenjunga, so benevolently generous from this life-giving magic that immediately she naturally must become the queen of hills. Thou art the emperor and majesty, O Kanchenjunga, but your child Darjeeling mirrors this supremacy and grows into the most desirable of queens by stealing irretrievably your heart and leaving, as you have to leave her, a nostalgia to ache for life, unless you constantly return. Universal minimalism. We are of a higher, better world than this one, where our dreams can meet and join each other in a cyberspace of nowhere and of everywhere, including all the dreams of humankind that share them with us in the extraordinary plus dimension of the sixth sense, extrasensory perceptions and what not. I know full well that you know what I mean. No further explanation is required. Let us just continue dwelling there, in bliss and beauty, meeting all our needs, and sticking to the motor of it all, the music of the spheres, the constant and eternal harmonies resounding throughout this minimalistic universe of more suns than the sum of grains of sand across the world, but merely perceptible to those initiated in this dream world, this resplendent essence of all harmony of life, this innermost and utmost centre of existence, this invaluable, priceless, precious thing called love. The same old story. When in the realm of heavenliness I think of our relationship and how we are like twins in souls born long before this life, united by our chosen destiny of musical ideals fought hard for, I'm like a blind man in my doubts and faltering in troublesome uncertainty, to just maintain my course through darkness in my faithfulness to you and our ideals, which we have suffered for so much, and pay so dearly just to find each other as inseparable friends on higher levels of affinity than ever can be gained by mortal forms of love. We are too close, now even at the furthest distance, ever to be able to dispense of our relationships, which, in absence of our physical contactability, is only the more strongly felt in metaphysical dimensions. But all this is old and well-known stuff already, which, however, I can never tire of repeating. Humility. When you have travelled far for nothing, just to find yourself in perfect darkness, with no end to it, no bottom to the abyss, like a blind man without stick led down into a mine, it is a lesson only of orientation, and you must get through that darkness all alone. There is no other way, and no one to release you from that hellish course to nowhereness of nothing, but to just get through with it, the worse the better. For it is a lesson only, just another education, the best form of which is travel, which by trials certainly will teach you something of reality and accurate perspective, since reduced into a flying brittle autumn leaf, completely at the mercy of the winds of destiny, of passion, nature, politics, and maybe war, you will be privileged to see things as they are, from both above and through, and from the gutter, which remains the best of all perspectives, since down there you only can look up and move up and improve, and have things to look forward to, perhaps the only natural position and perspective, that of natural humility, which teaches you the underdog's philosophy of true survival, just observing, bowing, looking up, admiring all forms of life and loving it. From the bottom of despair, Himalayan realism from the traveller's diary, the turning point of this journey was on the 11th, when suddenly the weather changed, and even the most experienced trekker here has never met with anything worse. I was then in North Sikkim. It was not as bad as on November 9th, 95, when there were disasters all over the Himalayas and 14 people perished on Mount Everest, but almost next to it. Infection, insect bites and running noses, snoring roommates, sleepless nights and aching limbs, you just like tormenting yourself with furious scratchings of your wounds, you cough your lungs out, eyes are watering cascades, And everywhere you hear around you this tremendous Himalayan cough, the empty dryness of the hollow hoarseness like of horses, snows and rains, the worst that ever trekkers met with, worse than even my friend veteran encountered by Mount Everest, and nightmares, worries, tortures, and laments. But still you carry on, enduring anything, just for the pleasure of surviving, even the worst thinkable ordeals, to one day finally return back home, to work, to humdrum winter weariness, to just a normal life instead of these extremes, however beautiful, revolting, educating, and adorable. Shambhala, Geographic Survey. The fabled kingdom transformed into Shangri-La is still a vivid and most real ideal, comprising all the ancient Buddhist kingdoms of the Himalayas, like Nepal and Sikkim, Bhutan and Tibet, Ladakh and Zanskar, Law, Mustang, and even Kashmir and Mongolia. Once a perfect and united realm, the capital of which was never found. But people say there still are endless caves under the mountains, leading to the sacred spot from where once all this perfect and harmonious world was ruled dynamically by the first of Buddhas, and the dream has never nor will ever die, like some kind of Asiatic messianism for all who live here, though a most concrete conception, no ideal in no time ever being too impossible, too good, nor too impractical to once be realized. Maya. She was just a woman and a mother, although Buddha's mother, like himself, an ordinary mortal, but has come to symbolize a human valuation of much higher worth than any deity. She has become a symbol for not only Mother Earth and Mother Nature, but for life itself and simple motherhood, the very instrument of constructivity, creation, and protection. Above all criticism as such, incapable of any harm or evil, just the harmony of continuity, the perfect sweetness of one-sided positivism, the miraculousness of the talent to make something out of nothing, and the home of love undying, everlasting. All this is embalmed in this simplicity of motherhood, a simple human character, quite limited and mortal, but endowed with the supremest gift of making life, and thus more worthy than the holiest divinity for being only lovable. The music of the stars. The music of the stars is unknown, but to those who dwell among the stars and listen to the language of the gods and goddesses, that mortals cannot hear and therefore must deny. But we can hear them, we who fly among the stars, with open minds of musicality and open hearts, to anything that is not common but exclusive, just to those extraordinary souls unscarred by baseness, naturally esoteric, born out from the ether, and wandering like exiles and outsiders here on earth, with nothing to relate to except like-minded exceptions, who can understand the language of the stars and listen to it, and who therefore piously obliged by understanding to keep quiet of the secrets of the esoteric universe, since that is far too overwhelming in its beauty to be used for any means except creation and construction, are compelled by love to caution and sincere discretion, and the more so the more strong it is, since it must never risk the smallest misrepresentation, since the higher and the truer, the more sensitive and delicate. The Exile, Dharamsala, November 20th. The Tibetan poet Tenzin Tsundu, exiled from Tibet in India, has been placed under house arrest to prevent him from protesting with other Tibetan exiles, while the Chinese president Hu Jintao makes his 3 days visit here. Driven hard across the snows over the pass in wintry mountains, with frostbitten feet and corpses on the way, shot brutally to death by occupation soldiers, or just stranded in the snows in freezing death, old people, children, mothers, victims of all kinds. Thus suffers the whole nation, driven out by brainwash propaganda and enforcement of autocracy, thus turning a whole people into prisoners and exiles in the country they themselves had built, and turned into a unique culture of philosophy, respecting life above all and tradition, with a wonderful flourishing sense for ceremonies, pompous, colourful and solemn as the perfect ordered party going on forever, until brutal inhumanity broke in with force and hate, intentionally wiping out a culture of 2,000 years, destroying 6,046 monasteries and temples out of 6,059, and burning manuscripts, handwritten books, 3/5 of all the libraries and treasuries of literature. And why? For sheer stupidity, the joy of violence, the glory of destruction, and the rape of beauty? For the triumph of the opposite of culture, human dignity, nobility, humanitarianism, compassion, to let evil with voluptuousness replace all virtue and all man's constructive efforts? The dictatorships and mad rapes of politics in the 20th century has turned the cultural protectors, humanists and lovers into exiles in this world of barbarism and cruelty. And it goes on, the rape of beauty by barbarity, not only in Tibet but everywhere, by blind and brutal brainwash from the media and politics, through the carelessness and greed and ignorance of mankind. The problems of esotericism. The unacceptability of esotericism is that it is esoteric, that is, for its inaccessibility reserved for just the happy few, since only those with an advanced mind and intelligent profundity of understanding can at all get any hang of it, since it is practically totally incomprehensible. Already the philosopher Pythagoras saw fully this predicament, wherefore he simply didn't make it any clearer, but just let it be, as most deep thinkers all since then have also done, from Plato and Plotinus, from the Essenes to the Kabbalists, from the Freemasons and Hermeticism to Rosicrucians, from the Master Eckhart to the Jesuits and the Illuminati, to the manifold secret societies of our day, of obstinate, forever hibernating hippies, to the children of New Age and the freethinkers of all ages, all heretics, outcasts, outsiders and aliens, who, unlike all common people who just live on earth, see life from outside, looking into it. Just another flow. Melt in tears and let the flood of warmth run over all the coldness of the world, to let it know what tears are for tenderness and care, compassion and all good things that make life worth living, and above all feelings, deep and honest, of the heart and soul, that ever need expression, and the warmest, softest, sweetest and sincerest evidence, expression, outlet and manifestation of your feelings are your tears, whether you cry for beauty, joy or sorrow, or for anything at all, but they release you, always being the original and truest food for love that never can be given out in vain. The portrait. Let me take with me your picture of your absolute consummate beauty, to keep locked up in my heart forever, for the eyes of no one else but me, the only one to fully worship and appreciate your beauty, unforgettably perceived and photographed by my mind's eye, to keep it as the highest and most incomparable of treasures, to look upon in precious moments of supremest privacy, to thereby stay in touch with you, in love imperishable, never to be perfectly consumed, but only, every time I look upon it, more aggrandized and the more so, the more I may live, and long beyond my dying days. Home to the dead, returning to normality from educating, edifying journeys and adventures in the world of beauty, teaching you humility and culture of a different perspective from above to humdrum Western mainstream brainwash, over-technocrated, automated, sterilized, where a seventh of the population go on psychic medicines as legal drug addicts, which is considered comme il faut, no matter if it breaks you down. It is quite normal to be burnt out from just sitting by a keyboard in a cubicle, and in the long run thus civilization certainly will follow you in breaking down, dissolving down the drain. This reinitiation in the Western brainwash of perdition is the worst ordeal you can experience, coming from a real world of ideals and truth and beauty to a snake pit of degeneration and decay, and all that you can do is to endure it, do the best of it, survive and struggle on, alone for your ideals in obstinate persistence, just to spite the mortal blind way down of mankind, for the hope of the necessity, of the occasion, of the turning of the tides. Politiska mord. En agent i London blir förgiftad enligt gammalt KGB-recept med renaste radioaktivitet, ett medel som blott supermakter kan begagna, men det Ryssland, som var ensamt om att ha motiv till mordet, blånekar naturligtvis, som Putin också gjorde när den tidigare journalisten Anna Politkovskaya blev mördad, nerskjuten i hissen till sitt hem på maffiavis med 5 dödliga kulor, vilket mord då också bara Ryssland hade något alls motiv till. Saken blir ej bättre av att Litvinenko, den i London mördade agenten, just var ute för att forska i det tidigare mordet på den modiga, envisa Anna Politkovskaya. Men Putin och politikerna resonerar så. Vem har väl tid och råd och orkat bry sig? Världen rasar ändå samman genom katastrofer, aids, malaria och tuberkulos, växthuseffekt och översvämningar, så vad bryr vi oss om politiska små mord, 1 eller 2, 1 dussin eller 2, när det ju ändå måste glömmas och försvinna i den globala, vanliga, katastrofala statistiken. Political murders. A secret Russian agent is in London poisoned in the old way of the KGB by radioactive means, which only superpowers have the means of, but that Russia, which alone was motivated to the murder, does of course deny it, as did Putin when the journalist of civil courage, Anna Politkovskaya, was murdered, shot down in the elevator of her home, with no less than 5 mortal bullets in the ordinary mafia style, which murder also only Russia could have any motive for. Things don't look any better, as the murdered London agent Litvinenko was investigating the aforesaid murder of the lovely Anna Politkovskaya. But Putin and the politicians reason with some realistic cynicism. Who cares? Who has the energy and time to bother when the world goes down the road to ruin anyway by AIDS, catastrophes, malaria, TBC, the global warming and ever-increasing floods? We can afford to overlook some small politic murder, 1 or 2, a dozen or another, since they must be soon forgotten anyway and disappear in the most boring usual flow of normal global catastrophical statistics. Love declaration. I love you. Let these words be stamped forever in eternity, no matter who am I, no matter who you are, just to make sure the pure sincerity of how much I love you outstandingly forever. Let it be and let it work and let it live and let it never die, because that is the only life for me, without which I will be as barren as a desert, bored to death by thirst and hunger and depravity, since you are all I ever cared for, whether drunk or sober, mad or sensible. You are the source of life and cure for anything, the only absolute insurance of there being any life at all, and for there being any meaning of existence, and for any continuity at all, for any love or any meaning of it. Midnight conversations. In the darkness of midnight, far away beyond ourselves, we meet and join in timelessness, like two spirits moulded into one by the truth of this momentary eternity. This bliss is the supremest of this life, and the miracle of it the most incredible. The eyes go out, and we live by hearing only, sweet soft words from barely audible voices, the loveliest of this life, only because they understand each other, and thereby comprise each other, in the pious breathless embrace of eternity. This union is this moment which, if you have experienced it, you can but always pray for its remaining and continuing forever.